Man once cheered by millions, now found lifeless inside one of Britain's most feared prisons. The news broke early Saturday morning. No headline, no encore, just silence behind the steel doors of HMP Wakefield. For years, he had been the voice that electrified arenas, the frontman of a generation that screamed his lyrics back at him. But somewhere between the spotlight and the shadows, something unthinkable took root. The name Ian Watkins, once synonymous with fame and rebellion, had become a chilling reminder of how deep corruption can hide behind charisma. Police say he was attacked in his cell, found unresponsive before medics could save him. Reports claim a weapon was involved. And as investigators comb through what happened that morning, one question echoes louder than any Lost Prophets song ever did. How does a rock idol end up dying this way? Before the headlines turned poisonous, Ian Watkins was untouchable. In the early 2000s, his name echoed through festival fields from Reading to Los Angeles. Lost Prophets weren't just another rock band. They were the band. Platinum records, screaming crowds, magazine covers, and a frontman who seemed born for the chaos of fame. Watkins moved through it all with a swagger that cameras adored, the kind of charisma that could turn a mosh pit into a choir. Back then, fans saw him as electric, unstoppable, the voice of defiance, eyeliner and all. Parents complained about the noise. Teenagers wrote his lyrics on bedroom walls. He had everything an artist could crave: money, adoration, access. Yet behind the sweat and the spotlight, a different story was already unfolding. One no one could hear beneath the amplifiers. What looked like confidence was something colder, a mask. And when it finally slipped, the silence that followed was deafening. In 2013, the curtain was ripped away. The headlines didn't read like gossip. They read like horror. Ian Watkins, once idolized as the face of Welsh rock, stood in court accused of crimes that shattered every boundary of human decency. What prosecutors revealed went beyond scandal. It was depravity in its purest form, child exploitation, indecent images, and the attempted assault of an infant. When the details emerged, the courtroom fell silent. Even hardened reporters struggled to write what they'd just heard. The judge, Mr. Justice Royce, said the case had plunged into new depths of depravity. He called Watkins a corrupting influence who showed complete lack of remorse. Those words echoed around the world, louder than any Lost Prophets anthem ever could. The two women who helped him, mothers of the very children he abused, were sentenced to 14 and 17 years. As the verdict spread, former fans burned their posters. Radio stations wiped Lost Prophets from playlists. The band dissolved overnight, each member publicly disowning the man they once called brother. The disbelief was total. Millions who once cheered his name now recoiled at the mention of it. And for many, the question that lingered wasn't just how he did it, but how long he'd been hiding it. HMP Wakefield isn't just a prison. It's a name whispered with unease. Known across Britain as Monster Mansion, it's home to some of the most dangerous and reviled inmates in the country. Behind its Victorian stone walls, men who shocked the world now live out their sentences in silence and fear. It was here that Ian Watkins spent the last decade of his life, serving 29 years for his crimes, with another 6 on license after that. Inside, fame doesn't buy you protection. In a place like Wakefield, notoriety is a target on your back. Reports say Watkins lived under near-constant threat, isolated from other inmates, yet never truly safe. Guards described him as withdrawn, still trying to cling to the delusion of being a celebrity, even as his name became shorthand for disgrace. Then came August 2023, his first brush with violence behind bars. He was attacked by fellow inmates, stabbed and beaten, left bleeding on the floor. He survived, but barely. Authorities downplayed the incident, calling his injuries non-life-threatening. Still, the message was clear. In Monster Mansion, reputation means nothing. And for men like Watkins, every sunrise could be their last. It happened early on a quiet Saturday morning, the kind of stillness that usually hangs over prison corridors before the day begins. But inside HMP Wakefield, that calm broke in an instant. Around sunrise, guards were alerted to a violent assault in one of the wings. By the time officers reached the cell, Ian Watkins was already down. Sources claim he'd been attacked with a knife, the kind smuggled in or crafted from metal scraps that circulate like secrets inside those walls. Emergency teams were called immediately. Medics worked on him at the scene, but it was too late. He was pronounced dead inside the same fortress, where he'd once been kept alive under constant watch. West Yorkshire police confirmed the death, but released few details, saying only that detectives were investigating and inquiries were ongoing. Inside, sources whisper it wasn't random, that tensions had been building, that even in isolation, Watkins couldn't escape the weight of what he'd done. It wasn't the first time he'd faced violence behind bars. In August 2023, he survived an attack that left him battered but breathing. This time, there would be no second chance, no hospital transfer, no headlines about recovery. Just finality, brutal, silent, and inevitable. For a man who once lived for the noise of a crowd, the way it ended was chillingly quiet. The timing couldn't be ignored. Just weeks before the attack, a damning inspection report had warned that violence inside Wakefield Prison was rising sharply. The chief inspector of prisons called it a place where many inmates felt unsafe, especially older men and those convicted of sexual offenses. Inmates whispered about shifting power dynamics, about younger prisoners testing limits, and guards stretched too thin. The warning signs were there, and then Ian Watkins was dead. Critics are now asking whether his death was preventable. If a man as high-profile as Watkins, one of Britain's most notorious inmates, could be fatally attacked inside one of the country's most secure facilities, what does that say about the system meant to contain him? Officials insist every protocol was followed, yet each statement sounds more like damage control than truth. It's a question that reaches beyond one man. How do you protect those society despises the most? Should justice end at sentencing, or does it demand safety even for the condemned? Those questions now hang over HMP Wakefield like the thick fog that often rolls across its walls. Heavy, cold, and impossible to ignore. When news of Ian Watkins's death broke, the reaction was immediate and conflicted. Across social media, former fans who once filled arenas with his lyrics now filled comment sections with shock, disgust, and something harder to name. Some called it karma, others called it justice, and a few simply said they felt empty. For the victims and their families, it wasn't closure. It was another reminder of wounds that never fully healed. Activists and child protection groups urged the public not to lose focus. "This isn't about fame," said NSPCC's De Magnon. "It's about victims, and those victims are children." His words cut through the noise, forcing people to reckon with the deeper truth. This story was never about a fallen star. It was about the innocence he destroyed. But still, the debate raged on. Was this poetic justice, or just another failure of the prison system? Did his death bring balance to a moral scale, or simply prove that violence only breeds more of it? Across forums, talk shows, and podcasts, people argued over whether anyone deserved such an end. Yet, beneath all the noise, one sentiment stood out. Relief that the story, for once, wasn't about his music or his name. It was about remembering those who never had a voice loud enough to be heard. In the end, Ian Watkins's story isn't just about crime or punishment. It's about how power and adoration can twist into something monstrous when left unchecked. Fame gave him access, power gave him protection, and manipulation kept the truth buried for years beneath flashing lights and roaring crowds. He lived as proof that charisma can be a disguise, that applause can hide rot. His death inside Wakefield feels almost symbolic, the final act of a man who built his identity on control and lost it behind concrete walls. For the fans who grew up with his music, it's a painful reminder that heroes can decay, that art doesn't erase the artist's sins. And for everyone else, it's a grim warning about the seductive nature of fame, how it can lift people to godlike status before tearing them apart in public. As one former supporter wrote online, "The louder the applause, the darker the silence behind the curtain." And maybe that's the truest thing anyone could say about him. Now the question lingers, one only you can answer. Was this justice served, or a tragic symbol of a system too broken to protect anyone?